So, we were looking at some projections for micro LED displays.
Yeah.
And honestly, the numbers are pretty mind-blowing.
Really
I'm
are.
talking about jumping from a global market size of like $661.6 million US in 2025
Right.
to a whopping $68,186.94 million
Wow.
by 2033.
That's
a compound annual growth rate
huge.
of 78.5%.
Yeah, 78.50% AGR is pretty remarkable.
That's remarkable.
It really is.
It makes you wonder, what's driving all of that?
Yeah, I know. And for you listening out there,
Yeah.
the material we've been digging into really highlights how much this is expected to expand in different parts of the world and in so many different applications for displays, big and small,
Big and small.
And what we're going to try to do today is make sense of all this data, pull out the important bits.
Absolutely.
The size of the market.
Yeah.
What's making it grow so fast.
Right.
And where things are really taking off.
Where we're seeing the most activity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The goal is to really understand what's happening without drowning in a sea of numbers.
Yeah, I think people are ready to hear about micro LEDs, but they're not ready to get a PhD in it.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's kick it off with the global picture.
Okay.
We mentioned a moment ago that it's expected to reach about $661.6 million US in 2025.
That's the projection, yeah.
And then
for 2025.
For 2025.
Yeah.
And with a CAGR of 78.5 over the next 8 years.
It really is.
What is really the core thing that is driving that kind of growth?
Well, it's a bunch of things all coming together at the right time.
Right.
First of all, there's a constant demand for higher and higher resolution displays.
Sure.
Think about fields like medical imaging, graphic design, where you need to see the tiniest details.
Right.
Micro LEDs can achieve a level of clarity that older displays really struggle with.
Yeah.
And that opens up a whole new set of possibilities.
Absolutely.
So that demand combined with some of micro LED's strengths, like how bright they can be and how energy efficient is driving adoption, especially in consumer electronics.
Yeah.
And the car industry.
Right.
Just a quick reminder for anyone new to this.
Yeah.
Micro LEDs are like tiny little LEDs, way smaller than the ones we're used to. That's what lets them pack in so many pixels
I see.
and achieve that brightness and efficiency that we're talking about.
So, so let's dive into North America.
Okay.
They have the biggest piece in the pie.
They do.
Over 40% of global revenue in 2025.
Yeah, over 40%.
With a market size of $264.64 million. And still projected to grow at a CAGR of 76.7 between 2025 and 2033. The U.S. in particular looks like it's leading the way here.
They really are.
What's going on in North America that makes them such a front runner?
When you look at the trends, it seems like North America just really embraces new tech, especially when it comes to consumer gadgets.
Right.
They want the best TVs, the most advanced smartphones, the coolest wearables. And the fact that the U.S. market alone is so big really shows you how much people there value high-performance displays. Now, Canada and Mexico are also growing pretty steadily, which suggests it's a continent-wide trend, this embrace of new technology.
Okay.
So
let's hop across the Atlantic now to Europe.
Okay.
They're holding the second largest market share.
Yes.
Over 30% of the revenue in 2025.
Over 30% in 2025.
At a market size of $198.48 million and a CAGR of 77.0%.
Right.
And there's a lot going on in lots of different countries.
There is.
Like the UK and Germany.
Yes.
What's fueling this growth?
This is interesting because it seems like Europe has its own specific drivers.
Yeah.
The report mentions a strong demand for high-definition displays.
Right.
Especially in the UK and Germany.
Yeah.
Which echoes what we saw in North America with consumer electronics.
Right.
But there's also a big emphasis on innovation and sustainability.
Sure.
Which fits perfectly with how energy-efficient micro LEDs are.
Right.
And the car industry seems to be a really important area for micro LEDs in Europe.
Yeah.
Car makers are really integrating these displays into their vehicles.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not just the big players, France, Italy, Russia, Spain, even smaller markets like Luxembourg, they're all showing decent growth.
So it really seems like a continent-wide adoption of the tech.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, let's swing over to Asia Pacific.
All right.
They've got around 23% of the global revenue in 2025.
Around 23%.
With a market size of $152.17 million.
Okay.
And they're projected to have the highest CAGR at 80.5%.
Wow, that's even higher.
Between 2025 and 2033.
Than the other regions.
Yeah. China and India are really driving this growth.
Absolutely.
What's happening over there?
This is a perfect storm of a few different things.
Okay.
First, Asia-Pacific, and particularly China and India, have really strong manufacturing capabilities, especially in the display industry.
Right.
So they're well-positioned to produce and scale up micro-LED tech. At the same time, there's a huge and growing consumer demand for electronics in these countries.
Right.
So you have a massive potential customer base,
right.
plus technological advancement and strong manufacturing.
Wow.
It's the ideal environment for micro-LEDs to take off.
It sounds like it.
And it's not just China and India, Japan, South Korea, Australia, Taiwan. They're all playing a part.
So there's broad regional enthusiasm.
Yeah, there really is.
Now let's turn our attention to Latin America.
Okay.
They've got a market share of more than 5% of global revenue in 2025.
Right.
Market size of 33.08 million. CAG of 77.9%.
Strong growth.
Brazil, Argentina,
yes,
and Colombia are mentioned specifically.
Right.
What's the outlook for micro-LEDs in Latin America?
Well, if you look at the bigger picture in Latin America, investments in digital infrastructure are really increasing.
Okay.
And as more people get connected to the internet and have access to technology, the demand for better displays goes up too. So even though their starting point might be smaller than other regions, that solid CAGR suggests they're on a path of strong growth.
Okay.
The retail sector is pointed out as a key end-use industry.
Okay.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
The visual impact of micro-LEDs, it's perfect for grabbing attention with digital science and advertising.
Absolutely. So, okay, finally we have the Middle East and Africa. Right now they have the smallest share of the market.
Yeah.
Around 2% of global revenue in 2025.
2%.
At 13.23 million.
Okay.
But their projected CAG between 2025 and 2033 is a mind-blowing 777.0%.
777.
The GCC countries, Egypt, South Africa, Turkey, Nigeria, are all showing huge potential.
They are.
What can explain that massive projected growth?
It's interesting, right? It's starting small, but it points to some major changes coming.
Right.
The report says it's mainly because of increased infrastructure investment across the Middle East and Africa.
Sure.
As these regions develop and modernize, they need advanced display technology in all sorts of sectors.
Absolutely.
Aerospace and defense are specifically mentioned as areas with potential.
Interesting.
So it seems like the durability and performance of micro-LEDs are seen as really valuable for specialized applications.
Okay, so we've kind of gone over the global and regional landscapes.
Yeah, I've got a good overview.
And now let's break down the market segments.
Okay.
By product type, by application, and by end-use industry.
Sounds good.
The report tells us that large displays are currently the dominant product type.
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
What's the reason for that?
You know, it's fascinating to think about that large displays are already well established in areas like commercial advertising, entertainment venues, and even home theaters.
Sure.
Micro-LEDs are just so bright.
Right.
Their color accuracy is amazing, and they're energy efficient, so they're super attractive.
It makes sense.
For those applications where visual impact and performance really matter.
Absolutely. Okay, but small and medium-sized displays are the fastest growing segment.
They are, yes.
What's driving that growth in the smaller form factors?
You know, this kind of points to the future of micro-LED tech. It's all about the demand for better displays in our devices. Smartphones, smartwatches, other wearables.
Absolutely.
Here, the key advantages are the high resolution, the energy efficiency, which is super important for battery life in portable devices, and their compact size, which allows for more flexible and sleeper designs. The automotive industry is playing a big role here, too, as they need those high-res, energy-efficient displays in their cars.
Gotcha.
For dashboards and infotainment.
Okay, so shifting to applications, TV is currently dominating.
Makes sense.
And that's in line with that consumer electronics focus.
Right.
And we talked about, what is it about micro-LED that makes it so good for TVs?
I think it goes back to what people want.
Yeah.
People are always looking for a more immersive and higher quality experience when they watch something at home.
Right.
And micro-LED delivers that. You know, it can produce incredibly vibrant colors. Deep blacks, high contrast. It's really captivating.
It really is.
And, you know,
Yeah.
The big players in the TV market
Yeah.
are investing heavily in micro-LED,
Right.
which just strengthens its position in this segment.
Okay. On the other hand, the fastest growing application is smart wearables.
Yes.
What makes micro-LED so well suited?
This is where micro-LED's unique strengths really come into play for smart wearables. You know, things like smartwatches and RVR headsets.
Absolutely.
Size and power consumption are super important.
Sure.
And micro-LED displays, they're incredibly energy efficient, which means longer battery life, which is crucial for wearables.
Absolutely.
Plus, they can achieve really high resolutions in a very small space. So you get sharper, more detailed visuals.
Right.
Which is key
Yeah.
for making AR and VR experiences feel real.
Sure. And immersive.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So finally, let's look at the end-use industries.
Okay.
Consumer electronics is the dominant one.
Yeah.
Which aligns with TVs and smartphones being so big.
It does, yeah.
In the application segment,
makes sense.
What makes micro-LED attractive to the consumer electronics sector?
Well, the consumer electronics industry is always trying to push the boundaries of performance and user experience. And micro-LEDs offer a really compelling mix of amazing image quality, energy efficiency, and a longer lifespan than older display technologies. This is exactly what consumers want.
Sure.
From high-end products, like fancy TVs, smartphones, tablets.
Absolutely.
So it's no wonder it's become such a sought-after tech in the consumer electronics world.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah. So the fastest growing segment is automotive.
Yes.
And we touched on that a little bit.
We did.
With the in-car displays.
Yeah.
But can you elaborate on why the car industry is so keen on micro-LED?
Absolutely. So cars are getting more and more sophisticated, right? They rely on displays for everything, infotainment, navigation, driver assistance systems, even those heads-up displays right on the windshield. And micro-LEDs, well, they're really bright.
Sure.
So they're great for visibility in all kinds of lighting.
Okay.
They have accurate color, which is important for displaying critical information. And they're flexible. You can make curved displays. Or even custom shapes that fit perfectly into the car's design. So as the car industry keeps innovating with things like autonomous driving and those enhanced in-car experiences, micro-LEDs are going to be a key player.
Okay, so we've talked about the numbers.
Yeah.
But what are the market forces?
It's always good to look deeper beyond just the numbers.
What are the big drivers?
Yeah.
What are the obstacles? And what trends should we be watching out for?
So let's look at the good stuff first.
Okay.
The demand for energy-efficient and high-resolution displays is just going up. And it's happening across so many different applications.
That's amazing.
And that's a major driver.
Sure.
And micro-LED tech itself is constantly improving.
Right.
Brightness and color accuracy keep getting better.
Okay.
And as we've said, the car industry adopting micro-LEDs is a big push too.
Okay. So what about the roadblocks?
Yeah, we've got to be realistic. Slowing down adoption. Well, right now, manufacturing micro-LED displays is expensive.
Okay.
And the processes are really complex. So the challenge for the industry is to figure out how to scale up production to meet the demand, but also bring the costs down.
Right.
You know, another hurdle is that there's no standard way to manufacture large micro-LED panels. That makes it hard to get everyone on board.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question.
Yeah.
What trends should we be watching?
This is an exciting area because there's so much happening.
Right.
We're definitely seeing more micro-LEDs in smart wearables and RVR, where their size and efficiency are so important.
Yeah.
And there's a huge push to make micro-LED TVs that will wow consumers with picture quality.
Okay, so to make these trends a little more concrete,
the
report mentions a couple of cool developments. In the industry, AUO Corporation showed off a 60-inch transparent micro-LED display at ICE 2024.
ICE 2024.
For those who don't know, ICE is the Integrated Systems Europe. It's a big trade show for audiovisual and system integration.
A really important event in the industry.
Yeah, so what's the significance of that kind of innovation?
You know, that transparent display from AUO, it really shows how versatile micro-LED tech can be.
Right.
Imagine all the possibilities.
Yeah.
You could have digital signs in store windows that don't block the view.
Right.
Or AR overlays in homes and businesses.
That's cool.
It's exciting to see micro-LED moving beyond traditional displays.
Yeah. Okay. And then Q-Pixel Inc. announced the first full-color, ultra-high-resolution micro-LED screen.
Yes.
With 5,000 ppi.
5,000 pixels per inch.
Using what they're calling polychromatic micro-LED technology.
Right.
That sounds super sharp.
That is incredibly sharp.
5,000 pixels.
Yeah. It's a major breakthrough.
Right.
It suggests that we could have incredibly detailed, realistic visuals.
Right.
Especially in smaller displays, like the ones we use in our headsets.
Right.
Or even high-end smartphones.
Okay.
And this polychromatic micro-LED tech basically means they've found a way to create full-color pixels at super tiny sizes. We're talking individual LEDs.
Wow.
Smaller than a human hair.
Wow.
That's how they achieve that crazy pixel density.
Okay, so for our listener, if you had to distill a simple main takeaway from this deep dive, what would it be?
The key takeaway is that the micro-LED display market is set for some serious growth.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing it everywhere across the globe.
Right.
With Asia-Pacific really leading the charge.
Yeah.
And in all sorts of applications. Smart wearables and the car industry are growing like crazy.
Yeah.
It all comes down to the need for energy-efficient, high-res displays. And micro-LED tech offers that perfect blend of high performance and efficiency, which makes it super appealing to a ton of industries.
Okay, so final thought for our listener.
Yeah.
Given all these trends, how do you think micro-LED will impact your devices, or maybe even your industry?
That's a great question.
Don't just think about sharper TVs.
Yeah.
Think about augmented reality.
Right.
The way we interact with our cars, even new kinds of digital signs and communication.
It's just a wide open field.
It really is.
Full of possibilities.
So we hope this deep dive gave you a good foundation.
Absolutely.
And now it's up to you to explore the areas that you're interested in.
Whatever sparks your curiosity.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening.